Well, with the understanding that this chain may not go onto the final vehicle in the game engine, let's just have some fun with it and see how we might create a chain to go on these steps here. Now, I'm going to press Control Spacebar. I have noticed that in the scale models here, they don't have the chain, simply because I think it's just too small of a detail to deal with on a scale model like this. And it may be a similar thing putting it into a game engine. There just may be too many polys. But, as I said, that doesn't mean we can't have a little fun here. So what I'm going to do is take the steps here in the scene collection and drag them up into the vehicle main, and I'll choose the scene collection then. And let's go ahead and hide the vehicle main and the images. And let's just work on creating the links of a chain. And there are several ways to do this. Please don't think that I'm saying that this is the only way you can create chains in Blender. But I think this is kind of a fun way to do it. So let's begin first with a torus. I'm just going to press Shift-A and go to Mesh Torus. There we go. And then once again, let's adjust these segments. The major segments, I don't know, let's try 12. Let's take it down to 12. And then the minor segments, let's take this down to 6. Let's try this. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then what we need to do is split these two sides so they look more like a chain. I'm going to use the x-axis here to the left and the right. It isn't necessary, but when we create the curve, because we're going to create a curved path, it'll come in aligned with the x-axis. So what I want to do now is split this right down the middle and extend it out to create the oval of the chain length. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and maybe I'll even go into a wireframe here. And let's Alt-click this edge right here, and Alt-Shift-click this edge right there. Now I want to split that so that these two sides are their own pieces. So I'm going to press Control-E to bring up the Edges menu, and I've got this Edge Split tool right here. So if I click that, not a whole lot happens, but if I deselect those and then hover over an edge and press the L key and select all linked components, you can see that they are now two separate pieces, and I can drag this out like this and maybe make a chain. I don't know, what do you think? About like this? Let me go back to that top view. Maybe something like that. All right, so now we need to connect these. So I'll press Alt-click for this edge, Alt-Shift-click for that edge, and then once again, bring up the Edges menu with Control-E, and now let's choose Bridge Edge Loops. And there we go. So let's do the same thing down here. Control-E and Bridge Edge Loops. So there is our chain length. Okay, so now we're going to use the array modifier to extend these out. However, we can't really do it based on the origin of this object. We're going to need another object so that we can move it and adjust it fairly easily. So what I'm going to do is create an empty. And an empty is just a location in 3D space. It has no geometry. It has no polygons. It's just a place in space. So I'm going to press Shift-A and go to empty, and I'll choose this plane axis. And once I do that, you can kind of see right here, I'm just going to drag it in the x-axis. There it is, and put it right at the end of our chain length right there. So now what I want to do is create an array of this object with this object as the offset. So let's come over here to the modifiers panel, and let's click Add Modifier and choose Array. And currently we're creating the array based on the original object, but let's change that by coming over here and turning off Relative Offset, turning on Object Offset, and then clicking on the eyedropper and then clicking on the empty right there. Now we can grab this empty and just drag it back and forth wherever we need it to be. But as you can see, they're not aligned in the proper direction. We need to turn one of them 90 degrees. So let's go ahead and do that with this original piece right here. Let's turn it around the x-axis 90 degrees. So I'll press RX90, and there we go. So now we've got our chain link here. We can move this until it kind of sits right around here at the very tip there. And now we can come over here back to our modifiers panel, but of course I need to select that original object. Now over here, we can increase the count of the array. So I'll just click and look at that. They just pop in one after the other, rotated 90 degrees every other one. So there we go. So there's the beginning of our chain. That's great. But what we now need to do is be able to turn it and move it based on a path. So to do that, we're going to need to create a curve path. So let's go ahead and press Shift A, go to Curve and Path. Now, there it is. It's in there. Let me hit Tab, and you can kind of see it there. So what I want to do is reduce the size of the chain to kind of fit along that path, at least for now. So I'm going to select this main link. Actually, I could choose any of them, I suppose. And then I want to choose this empty as well, because if I hit S and try and scale this now, look at what happens. That's not going to work. So what let's do is select the object and the empty together. And then I'm also going to move this pivot point so I scale around the 3D cursor here in the center. So I'm going to change my pivot point to 3D cursor, and I'll hit S, and I'm going to scale this down quite a bit like this. Okay, so now we have our NURBS path here, right? And I'm going to tab into edit mode, and you can see it there. All right, so now let's go ahead and attach this to the curve. I'll tab back into object mode, select the chain link, and let's now add another modifier, a curve modifier. I'll click add modifier, and under deform, there's this curve right here. So let's click that. I will choose the eyedropper, and then right in here, I can choose that NURBS path. And there we go. Okay, so it's popped over there, but let's take a look at what it's done now. I'll select the NURBS path again right there, tab into edit mode, and what we can do now is grab one of these points, say like this, and hit G, and it begins to move that chain based on the path that we've created here. All right, so let's add a few more of the links here. I'll click the chain links, and let's add a few more in the count. I'll just click out here. There we go. Let's choose the NURBS path again. Tab into edit mode. Okay, so now if we take this, let's just grab this, G, move that, you can see we can move our chain. Kind of cool, huh? Now let me switch back to median point up here, and I'll hit G, and there we go. So, and also it kind of slides along the path as well. So if I move this down here, say, and I move this up here, and then I tab into edit mode and I move that path, I'll just click here and move it. You see it just kind of slides along it like that. So that's kind of cool. All right, let me undo that. I will undo these moves here with Control Z. Now we need to take it and put it in place on our vehicle. So let's bring back the vehicle main here. There it is. And we can see we've got some work to do. What I'm going to do is select everything. I'm going to select the empty, the NURBS, and the torus, everything, and move it over and scale it down. Now I want to make sure, let me switch to median point here again. I think when I undid that, I changed that back. So let's move this up and over. And we can kind of put these in place in the same way we did that L-shaped tube there. Let me turn around the Y, R, Y, like this. And remember, I'm moving everything. I've got all three of our objects selected over here. All right, so I'm going to move this over here. And let's get this kind of in place right about, where was that? Let me see. It's right inside of this loop. So let's go ahead and do that. Bring it up. It looks like it's going to need to be smaller now, doesn't it? So I'll scale it down quite a bit. Something like that. Yeah, let's try that. That may be too small. Let's do this. Okay. All right. Now what let's do is let's go ahead and just grab that NURBS path, tab into edit mode, and we'll just begin moving this around. So what I'll do is I'll take this and move it. It looks like it needs to go down to the back of that step there. So I'll just hit G and move this down like this. And let's move it down and try and get it in place here. And now we can begin to move all of these. So I'll just grab, say, one of these and move it in. One of these, move it in. So you see I'm just moving these in one at a time. Now we can, of course, add more here. Remember, we can select 2 points and right-click, choose Subdivide, and we've got an extra point in there. There we go. Oh, we can move these back now too, huh? I'll hit G and move these back like this. So it's basically the same process we did with that L tubing support piece. Same thing, just now using all the points of the path to get things in place the way you want it. Okay, now I'll go ahead and tab back into object mode, select the chain links, and then let's add more on the count. We just bring that down here like that. And how many more do we need? Well, maybe one more. Let's just do one more like that. All right. And there we go. We have one of our chain links. Now, there's more, of course, we can do. We can add a piece of geometry up here for it to connect to. And, of course, we want to duplicate this, mirror it maybe, and move it over here. But let's work on that in the next video.